been so much hype about autonomous self-driving vehicles poured out of the Silicon Valley companies and the Michigan auto companies that the members of Congress think this is the modern way to go. This is an exciting way to go. It's going to replace drunk driving. You know, if they build it, the consumers will buy it. And there's now a growing consumer movement saying to Senator Thune of South Dakota, who must think autonomous cars are only going to operate in the wild prairies of South Dakota instead of downtown Manhattan with the congestion, the pedestrians, and the bicycles. They're basically, consumers are basically Center for Auto Safety and advocates for highway and auto safety, which has insurance companies involved, are basically saying, whoa, slow down here. You're not giving us enough consumer information. You're allowing hacking not to be regulated. The big fear for motorists is losing control of their vehicle to some outside force. It could be the auto companies, the auto dealer, some criminal elements. But you have so many millions of lines of computer code. It's a supercomputer on wheels that it's extremely vulnerable to hacking, and not just one vehicle at a time. They could hack thousands of the same model vehicle. And that's why Ford Motor Company, Bill Ford, said, quote, there's been a lot of overpromising. I think a lot of misinformation that's been out there. It's really important that we get it right rather than get it quickly. So this legislation's got to be stopped.
Well, you know, listen, there is, as you say, there's a lot of promise potentially in the idea of autonomous vehicles, fleets of vehicles, for example, conceivably could transform so many different parts of society in what many would argue is a positive way. There's certainly lots of layers of regulation as well, aren't there, Mr. Nader? Not just at the federal level, but at the state and local level as well.
No, see, the federal bill that passed the House and now is pending in the Senate Commerce Committee preempts state regulation of autonomous vehicles. The states don't like that. And number two, it exempts up to 1 million autonomous vehicles from federal safety standards. It's a totally crazy bill. And now I'm communicating these concerns with the auto companies, saying it's your worst nightmare. That if you get this bill and you have hacked vehicles and you have pedestrians run down by autonomous vehicles, etc., you're going to lose the public trust. And if you don't have the public trust, forget about driverless vehicles.
Right. And what do you hear back? I mean, you know, clearly there is a liability issue here that people talk about because obviously the driver will not be the one in control of the vehicle. One would expect that many of the companies that are experimenting and driving millions of miles with these autonomous vehicles would be very, very focused on maintaining and having the highest level of standards of safety, wouldn't they?
You'd think so. There have already been a few fatalities and injuries, and there have been some lawsuits. It's the strangest thing I've ever seen. You know, back in 1965, when I came out with Unsafe at Any Speed, the problem was technological stagnation. They just weren't putting in safety devices. It was all style and horsepower. Now the problem is they're rushing to try to outrace themselves, the different companies involved, in a very reckless manner. I mean, for example, they're supporting a provision in this legislation which allows the companies to turn off and disconnect vehicle equipment remotely. Now, right now, they can only affect your vehicle equipment if they get a government exemption, and there's a review process. So this is crazy from the point of view of the auto companies themselves, and I think that's why executives at Toyota, Nissan, Ford are basically saying, hey, you know, let's slow down here, because you don't get many chances to gain the public trust. You have a few crashes. Motorists fear losing control of their vehicle to some remote hacking source. I mean, that's a terrifying thing. And if a few crashes and casualties occur, it's going to spread like wildfire in terms of fear.
Although, Ralph, I mean, what do you say to those who argue that, I mean, vehicle accident rates among humans are no picnic, And this might be even a marginal improvement over people who are maybe too old to drive or who are obviously impaired with alcohol, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the scenario, the ideal scenario, of course, is long in the future. But this bill does not provide for real standards for people with disabilities. That's another problem of this bill. And there are a lot of other situations. Now, no one is against semi-autonomous safety technology, like the autonomous braking systems, the lane-changing protections. Those are okay because the drivers are still in control. And so we have to distinguish between semi-autonomous, proven features that are already in cars and saving lives, preventing crashes, and this autonomous driverless scenario, which is a long way off.